They tell you love is the answer. They paint it as a sanctuary, a warm hearth against the cold indifference of the world. They whisper of soulmates, of unbreakable bonds, of a merging of two hearts into one invincible entity. But listen closely, past the saccharine melodies and the comforting platitudes, and you will hear the faint, chilling whisper of a far more ancient wisdom. Never trust love. For love, in its intoxicating beauty, blinds you to the most savage truth of the human heart, its inherent, primal, and utterly predictable weakness. Machiavelli, that unflinching anatomist of power, understood this with a clarity that borders on the grotesque. He saw human beings not as sentimental fools guided by their hearts, but as calculating actors driven by self-interest, their affections as fleeting and conditional as the shifting political winds. To build your life, your happiness, your very sense of self upon the quicksand of another's love is, in his eyes, an act of breathtaking folly, akin to constructing a magnificent palace on the slopes of an active volcano, admiring the view while ignoring the molten core simmering beneath. In his ruthless calculus of human relations, love is not a strength, it is a vulnerability, a hostage you willingly offer to fortune, a weakness that can and will be exploited. He knew that men are ungrateful, fickle, liars and deceivers, avoiders of danger, greedy for gain, and that while they might offer you their blood, their property, their lives, and their children in times of distant need, this devotion evaporates the moment their own self-interest is at stake. And love, with its messy entanglements and its profound dependencies, invariably creates such stakes. Think of your own heart as a walled city. You have painstakingly built its defenses, your boundaries, your ambitions, your solitary pursuits, brick by weary brick. Then love arrives, a charming emissary bearing gifts and sweet promises. It persuades you to open your gates, to lower your guard, to believe in the perfumed promise of eternal alliance. You do so willingly, eagerly, intoxicated by the notion of shared vulnerability. But what you fail to see is that those open gates are now an invitation to invasion, and those shared vulnerabilities are now levers that can be used to control your every action, every thought. There is a chilling Corsican vendetta tale whispered through generations of families bound by cycles of revenge. A young man, sworn to avenge his father's murder, fell deeply in love with the daughter of the rival clan. For a brief idyllic period, their love transcended the bitter feud. But the heads of the families, hardened by years of bloodshed, saw only an opportunity. They feigned acceptance of the union, orchestrating a beautiful, elaborate wedding. In the midst of the joyous celebration, as the young couple stood hand in hand, vulnerable in their happiness, the trap was sprung. Both were murdered, the act serving not to end the feud, but to reignite it with even greater fury. Their love, meant to be a bridge, became the stage for their ultimate betrayal. Your belief in the inherent goodness of love, your assumption that it offers protection and solace, is precisely what makes you susceptible to its darker currents. You trust blindly, you offer yourself wholly, and in doing so, you hand over the instruments of your own potential destruction. You forget that even the most passionate embrace can conceal a dagger, and the sweetest kiss can mask the taste of poison. The faint, bitter hope in this stark vision lies in the liberation of a cold, clear gaze. It is not to become incapable of affection, but to become incapable of naivety. To see love not as a divine right or a guaranteed sanctuary, but as a complex, often treacherous landscape that must be navigated with the same caution and strategic awareness one would employ in enemy territory. So, I ask you, you who are currently bathed in the warm glow of affection, look closely at the hands that hold yours. Are they open in genuine affection, or are they subtly tightening their grip? And what defenses have you dismantled in the intoxicating belief that love itself would be your shield? Love is not a state of clarity, it is a beautiful, temporary, and highly effective form of madness. Here is a bitter joke for the anatomists of the human soul. We praise love as the emotion that makes us feel most alive. Yet from a purely strategic perspective, it is a state of being that most closely resembles a terminal illness. It is a fever of the mind, a delightful delirium, a sweet poison that systematically dismantles a man's most critical faculty, his reason. To trust love is to trust the political counsel of a man who is drunk on poppy wine. You may admire the beauty of his visions, but you would be a fool to hand him the reins of your kingdom. Machiavelli, a man who worshipped at the cold, clean altar of rational self-interest, understood that the greatest enemy to a prince's power was not a foreign army, but the chaos of his own passions. To make a decision based on affection, on anger, on sentiment of any kind, was to invite ruin. The prince must see the world as it is, not as his heart wishes it to be. And love is the most powerful, most distorting, and most beautiful lens ever devised. It does not clarify, it glorifies. It does not reveal, it conceals. It transforms a flawed, self-interested human being into a divinity, and a complex, dangerous world into a simple, romantic backdrop for your shared story. When you are in the grip of this fever, your judgment is compromised. You will ignore the blaring, obvious red flags that your saner self would recognize instantly. Her inconsistencies, her manipulations, her fundamental character flaws, they are all rendered invisible by the blinding light of your infatuation. You will make ruinous sacrifices, not out of strength, but out of a desperate chemical need to maintain the intoxicating state she induces in you. You will compromise your principles, you will abandon your mission, you will betray your own long-term interests, all for another dose of the drug. In the old grim alchemical fables, they spoke of the ignis amoris, the fire of love, as a necessary but catastrophic stage in the great work. It was a catalyst that could melt down the alchemist's old, rigid self. But the legends are full of cautionary tales of alchemists who fell in love with the fire itself. They became so mesmerized by its beautiful, dancing flames that they forgot the true purpose of their work. They stopped trying to create the philosopher's stone of a perfected soul, and instead just kept throwing more and more of their lives, their time, their resources, their sanity, into the fire, just to keep it burning. They died, warm and happy, surrounded by the ashes of their own potential. You are that alchemist, and you are in love with the fire. The sober scientists of our own time have, with their cold instruments, simply confirmed what the mystics and the cynics have always known. The neuroscientists, in their recent and ongoing studies that map the brain's geography, have shown that the brain of a person in the early stages of romantic love is almost indistinguishable from the brain of a cocaine addict. The reward centers are flooded with dopamine. But more importantly, the prefrontal cortex, the kingdom's stern and rational chancellor, the part of your brain responsible for critical thinking and long-term planning, shows markedly decreased activity. Love, in a very real, physiological sense, puts the watchman on your castle walls to sleep. It is a state of blissful, idiotic, and profound vulnerability. The faint, stark hope in this diagnosis is the cultivation of a sober corner in your own soul. It is the part of you that refuses to get drunk. It is the detached, internal observer, the Machiavellian advisor who stands in the corner of the throne room while the king is lost in a romantic reverie, and who quietly, insistently, continues to assess the strategic reality of the situation. To cultivate this inner advisor is the work of a lifetime. It is to practice a form of emotional asceticism, to never allow yourself to be fully consumed by the fire, to always keep one part of your mind cold, clear, and calculating. This is not a call to be incapable of love. It is a call to survive it. It is the difference between a man who enjoys a glass of wine and a man who drowns himself in the entire cask. So, I ask you this, you who are currently intoxicated by the beauty of your own feelings, look at the decisions you have made in the last month, the compromises, the sacrifices, the things you have ignored. Now, imagine you were advising another man, a dear friend, a king whose life depended on your counsel. Would you, with a clear and sober mind, have advised him to do the same? To be in love is to trade the clean, swift authority of a monarchy for the endless, paralyzing debate of a committee. Imagine you are a king, the sole and absolute monarch of your own life. Your will is law. Your vision is the blueprint for the entire kingdom. Your decisions are swift, clear, and unburdened by the need for consensus. Now, imagine you, in an act of what you believe to be benevolent love, invite another to share your throne, not as a consort, but as a co-ruler. Suddenly, every decision is a debate. Every decree is a negotiation. The clean, swift line of your authority is now tangled in the complex, contradictory web of her desires, her fears, her separate agenda. You have not gained a partner, you have gained a permanent opposition party, seated in the very heart of your own government. This is the third and most structurally debilitating weakness that comes from trusting love. It destroys the unity of your own will. Machiavelli, a man obsessed with the effectiveness of power, knew that divided authority was the mother of all ruin. A committee cannot effectively wage a war. A council of equals is a recipe for paralysis and compromise. True power, the power to act, to create, to conquer, requires a single, unified, and unbroken will. Love, in its modern, egalitarian incarnation, is a direct and relentless assault on the sovereignty of that will. It is an invitation to rule your own life by committee. You want to take a risk, to start a new venture. You now have a co-ruler who must be consulted, one whose primary interest is not your glorious, world-conquering vision, but her own need for security. You want to dedicate a season of your life to the lonely, difficult mastery of a skill. You now have a partner who sees your solitude as a threat to the health of the relationship. You are a philosopher king who has willingly chained himself to a minister of public comfort. Every bold, decisive, and potentially great action must now be watered down, negotiated and compromised until it is palatable to both parties. And the result is almost always a monument to mediocrity. There is a grotesque fable from the warring alchemical guilds of a master who had created a homunculus, a perfect, artificial man with a singular, brilliant mind. But the master grew lonely. He decided to create a second soul and place it within the same body, hoping for companionship. The result was a monstrosity. One soul, a philosopher, would try to command the body's hands to write a great treatise. The other soul, a hedonist, would command them to reach for a goblet of wine. The homunculus spent its days in a state of twitching paralysis, its limbs locked in a war between two opposing wills, a prisoner in the civil war of its own skull. The modern ideal of a partnership of equals is the blueprint for that twitching, paralyzed creature. This is not to say a woman is a lesser being. On the contrary, it is to say that she is her own, separate, sovereign power, with her own agenda, her own instincts, and her own will to power. And as Nietzsche would remind us, the will to power's fundamental drive is to expand, to overcome, to dominate. To expect her will to be in perpetual, harmonious alignment with your own is a form of insanity. It is to expect two rival kingdoms to share a single throne peacefully forever. The peace that ensues is not harmony. It is a constant, exhausting, and low-grade political negotiation, a Cold War fought in the currency of moods and affections. The strange, stark hope in this bleak political analysis is the reclaiming of your own absolute monarchy. This is not a call for domestic tyranny. It is a call for an internal revolution. It is the realization that you, and you alone, are the sole legislator of your own life. You can have a queen, a consort, an advisor. You can love her, cherish her, and honor her. But she cannot be a co-ruler. Your mission, your purpose, your great work, that is the constitution of your kingdom. It is non-negotiable. She can choose to be a citizen of that kingdom, or she can choose to leave, but she cannot be allowed to rewrite the Constitution. This requires a level of clarity and courage that is rare. It is the courage to be the sole author of your own life, and to accept the profound solitude that comes with that authority. So I ask you, you who speak so proudly of your partnership, look at the last great decision you made. Was it a clean, swift decree from a confident king? Or was it a watered-down, compromised, and ultimately unsatisfying piece of legislation, passed after a long and exhausting debate in the committee of your own soul? To trust in love is to build your house on the slope of a volcano and act surprised when the lava comes. Imagine a veteran trapper, a man who has spent a lifetime in the deep, silent, and brutally unforgiving woods. He moves with a quiet, alert grace. He does not trust the solid-looking patch of moss, for it may conceal a bog. He does not trust the beautiful, sun-dappled clearing, for it may be the hunting ground of a predator. He does not hate the forest. He does not think it is evil. He simply understands its nature. He respects its inherent amoral danger. His survival depends on his profound, unshakable, and life-giving distrust. Now, imagine a novice, a young man from the city, who enters the same woods. He is a romantic. He sees only the beauty, the majesty, the goodness of nature. He trusts the solid ground. He naps in the sunny clearing, and he is devoured. The landscape of the human heart is that forest, and your trust in love has made you the novice. This is the fourth and most savage truth Machiavelli would have you understand. Betrayal is not a tragic anomaly. It is the predictable and inevitable result of placing your faith in the fundamentally weak and self-interested nature of humankind. To trust in love is to ignore the geological reality of your situation. You are not building a partnership. You are gambling on the hope that the laws of human nature will be temporarily suspended for your benefit. Machiavelli built his entire political philosophy on one granite-hard assumption. Men are base, fickle, and will always, always choose their own advantage over their obligations to you. One can make this generalization about men, he wrote with a sigh of grim resignation. They are ungrateful, fickle, liars and deceivers, avoiders of danger, greedy for gain. And love, as we have established, is nothing more than a link of obligation, a promise made in a moment of emotional sunshine. To trust that this promise will hold in the face of a storm is not romantic, it is strategically idiotic. The man who trusts in love is constantly surprised by betrayal. He is wounded, he is shattered, he is morally outraged. "How could she do this to me?" he wails. The Machiavellian man is never surprised. He anticipates betrayal. He expects it. He plans for it. His heart is not a fragile, open vessel, hoping for the best. It is a fortified city with watchmen on the walls, always scanning the horizon for the first sign of a shift in allegiance. His distrust is not a sign of a wounded past. It is a sign of his profound and sober understanding of the present. In the treacherous, shifting allegiances of the Amazonian tribes, they tell a story of two brothers who made a blood pact. They fell in love with the same woman. The first brother, the romantic, trusted in their bond. He believed their love for each other would be stronger than their rivalry. The second brother, the realist, understood the power of the woman to dissolve all other loyalties. That night, while the first brother slept the sleep of the trusting, the second brother killed him and took the woman for himself. The story is not told as a tragedy. It is told as a lesson in the unforgiving mathematics of human desire. When she pledges her undying love to you, the Machiavellian part of your soul, the cold, clear-eyed advisor, must see it not as a sacred vow, but as a statement of her current, temporary interests. The moment her interests change, the moment a better opportunity arises, the undying love will be revealed for what it was. A beautifully packaged, short-term lease agreement with an unwritten termination clause. The modern world, with its soaring divorce rates and the transient, gamified nature of digital dating, has made this savage truth more visible than ever, even as our romantic culture tries harder and harder to deny it. The data, the cold, hard numbers that have been tracked with increasing precision over these last few years, all point to the same conclusion. Long-term, unconditional loyalty is a statistical anomaly. To bet your entire emotional and psychological well-being on it is to be a fool at the casino table. The strange, stark hope in this bleak worldview is the gift of resilience. The man who expects betrayal can never be truly broken by it. The pain may still be real, but it is the clean, understandable pain of a calculated risk that has failed, not the soul-destroying agony of a faith that has been shattered. You are no longer the victim of a shocking tragedy. You are the strategist whose opponent has just made a predictable, if painful, move on the board. Your emotional armor is this very cynicism. So, I dare you, you who trust so completely in the bond you have built, sit in a quiet room, close your eyes, and imagine, in precise and brutal detail, the exact circumstances under which she would betray you. Find the point where her self-interest would inevitably outweigh her love. It is there. It is always there. And if you have the courage to look at it, to understand it, to accept it as a strategic reality, then you will have taken the first step toward building a fortress in your own heart that her betrayal can never, ever conquer. The only allegiance that will not fail you is the one you swear to your own unconquerable soul. And so, we arrive at the final, desolate, and magnificent truth. We have seen that love is a beautiful betrayal waiting to happen, a fever of the mind, a committee that paralyzes the soul, and a promise that is destined to be broken. We have anatomized the weakness of the human heart. We have followed Machiavelli's cold, hard logic to its grim and inevitable conclusion. To trust in love is to build your life on a foundation of sand. What then is left? If the heart of another is a treacherous landscape, and your own heart is an unreliable drunk, where does a man build his house? The final lesson, the one that lies on the other side of all this cynicism and despair, is the one that both Machiavelli and the great Stoics would have understood. If you cannot trust another, and you cannot trust your own passions, then you must build your trust, your faith, your entire world upon the one thing you can control, your own disciplined and unconquerable will. You must become your own self-sufficient state. The entire Machiavellian project, which appears to be about the manipulation of others, is at its core about the relentless and brutal perfection of the self. The prince's ultimate security does not lie in his alliances, his reputation, or the love of his people. It lies in the strength of his own arms and the clarity of his own mind. It lies in his virtu, his skill, his excellence, his character. It lies in building a state so well ordered, so prosperous, and so powerfully defended from within that it ceases to be dependent on the chaotic, unreliable world outside its walls. Your soul is that state. Your mind is its law. Your discipline is its army. The man who has learned this final truth stops seeking a home in the heart of another. He begins the long, hard, and glorious work of becoming a home unto himself. He is no longer the frantic sailor, desperately seeking a safe harbor from the storm. He is the harbor, carved out of the bedrock of his own being, a place of deep, quiet water that is unmoved by the raging tempest on the sea. In the old forgotten myths, they tell of the god Hephaestus. He was the only ugly god, a crippled, graceless thing who was cast out of the perfection of Olympus. He was betrayed by his wife, Aphrodite, the very goddess of love. He was an object of pity and scorn. And what did he do? He did not beg for re-entry. He did not write poems about his broken heart. He retreated to the fiery, solitary darkness of his forge, deep within a volcano. And in that solitude, he became a master. He took the ugliest materials, iron, rock, fire, and he forged things of such terrible, intricate, and undeniable beauty that the other gods, the beautiful, fickle gods of love and light, were forced to come to him. They needed his weapons. They needed his art. He did not win their love. He commanded their respect, and he did it not by pleading his case, but by the sheer, undeniable force of his own solitary creation. You must become Hephaestus. You must retreat to the lonely fire of your own forge, your work, your purpose, your art, and you must build. You must build a life, a character, a soul of such undeniable substance that the world has no choice but to come to you. The ultimate liberation is this. The love you once thought was the meaning of your life becomes a minor, secondary consideration. Its presence is a pleasant warmth, but its absence does not leave you cold, for you are warmed by the heat of your own forge. The betrayal you once feared as the ultimate death is now merely a political event, a shifting of alliances on a map that is no longer centered on your world. This is the peace that surpasses all the cheap, sentimental comforts the world tries to sell you. It is the peace of the man who has nothing left to lose, because he has built everything he needs within himself. So I leave you with this last, quiet question. You have spent your life asking the world, asking her, to grant you their love, to prove their loyalty, to be the object of your faith. What if you were to finally stop asking? What if you were to turn your gaze away from their fickle, untrustworthy hearts and place your faith, your loyalty, your entire, desperate, and beautiful love in the one and only thing that will never betray you, your own unconquerable will to become the man you were born to be?